This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley.
Broadcasting live from AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and in the evenings on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the nighttime hours on 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. This is the Matt McNeil Show, but this is not Matt McNeil, rather, talking to you. Hi, everyone. This is JP Boghossian filling in for Matt, who is off today. Also with me in the studio is Jim Pounds, my executive producer of my other shows on AM 950. Hello, Jim.
Hello, all.
And in the making sure all of this is working is Patrick in the studio room. Hello, Patrick.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So we've got a packed show for you today. We've got Alison Page, who's running for the Wisconsin Assembly District 30. We're going to talk about some media coverage of this election because I have thoughts as a former broadcast journalist. We've got Matt Caffrey, Senior Director of Organizing at Swing Left, who's going to join us this hour. We're going to talk about letter writing to voters with Jim here, who's been doing that for several voting cycles. And then in the second hour, we've got Dale Stark from Hennepin Arts. We're giving away tickets to Harry's Situation at the Landmark Theater, and AM 950's very own Philip Anthony is going to be here to break down his experiences with door knocking. As you can see, I'm talking really fast because we're going to get out the vote today. I'm not hitting the panic button, but I'm definitely going to hit the alert button. This race feels too close. And I want everybody to have something tangible that they can do when they walk away from listening today, whether you're in Minneapolis or Chicago or Seattle. We can have the optimism and the hope. Those are good feelings to have, but we've got a lot of work to be doing. Lives are at stake. Literal lives are at stake, which is why I am so thrilled to have our first guest, Alison Page. Alison is running for the Wisconsin Assembly District 30. Hello, Alison. Welcome to the Matt McNeil Show.
Hi, thanks for having me on, JP.
Absolutely. So I want to hear a little bit. So you were a nurse, and you are were CEO of Western Wisconsin Health. Just found out before the show that you're teaching at the University of Minnesota. A lot of your focus professionally has been on rural health care. So tell us, why did you get into this race, and what are your campaign goals?
Well, I've worked my entire life in healthcare, and pretty much everything I've done in my life is related to improving communities and making the world a better place for children and the families they live in, starting in Western Wisconsin and particularly in Wisconsin. So healthcare my whole life, started as a nurse, went into administration, worked for Fairview Health System, for those of you in Minnesota, for a long time. And then for the last 13 years of my career, I was the CEO at Western Wisconsin Health. I have always lived in Western Wisconsin, born here, plan on dying here a long time from now. I quit working for money a couple years ago. I teach a little bit at the U, and I've always been extremely interested in politics. I've run a couple times before for state senate in 2008. I thought maybe we needed some healthcare people in Madison. In a right-leaning district, didn't win. I ran 2 years ago, right when I left my job, and in a very right-leaning assembly district I currently live in is a 50. Now we are ungerrymandered, and the district I currently live in is a 50. We are ungerrymandered, and the district I currently live in is a 50-50 flip district. It's winnable, and I'm the candidate to do it. So some of my goals, obviously, I'm very interested in healthcare. I am very interested in securing the future of our democracy in Wisconsin with nonpartisan map process and secure and safe voting going into our future. I've served on the River Falls School Board for 17 plus years. Quite a while ago, I'm back on the school board now for many reasons. And I'm very interested in the future of public education, K-12 university systems, 2 years colleges, and our tech schools, and making sure that these are excellent as they are a cornerstone of our economy in Wisconsin. So my main goal is to make Wisconsin a great place to live, work, play, and also the best place to raise a family in the country. I think if we do that, we do secure the future of our economy because people will be moving here with their families, and we know for the future of our economy, we have to have an influx of people, right?
Absolutely. So you mentioned the maps, and I think folks who maybe don't live in the heartland who live in other places, like Seattle, maybe not understand how awful the maps were in Wisconsin. And so I am curious to hear more about how you feel so the Supreme Court, they got rid of the maps. They asked for, the governor and the Republicans. They found a map that, is a compromise, I guess you could say. I'm not quite sure, but it has made your district much more competitive. Can you talk more about how that happened and what its effect has been for you?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people at the doors don't understand gerrymandering. Like, what do you mean the maps weren't fair? What do you mean gerrymandering? And so I should, too, anchor everybody. If you're wondering where this district is, we are right where western Wisconsin bumps out. We're part of the Twin Cities metro area, really. We're Pierce, St. Croix County, right on the western edge. I-94 goes right through the middle into Minnesota. So the way I explain gerrymandering to people in the most simple sense is Wisconsin is a purple state. We're kind of 50-50, right? On the national elections, we're always very tight, very close. We've got one Republican U.S. Senator, one Democrat, a Democratic U.S. Senator. So we're kind of a mixed deal here. If you take all the votes that were cast for assembly representatives in the last election, the majority of those votes are cast for Democrats, or it's pretty even. And yet almost 2/3, one shy of 2/3 of the people sitting in the seats in our 99-person state legislature are Republican. So how does that happen? It happens because you very carefully draw the maps to say, oh, that township has leans left. Let's carve that out and put it in with other left-leaning townships. So for me personally, the town I live in, River Falls, Wisconsin, was split down the middle. Southern half of it was in the old 93rd Assembly District. The northern half of it was in the 30th Assembly District. My house was in the 93rd, which is why I ran in that district 2 years ago. I lost 60-40. The Republican won. It's very rural, goes all the way down to Pepin, if you know where that is. And now my house and just all of River Falls, all of Hudson, all of North Hudson, and the surrounding rural area are in the new 30th. And so if you look at that area, 2 years ago, Governor Evers lost in that area by just 100 votes. Judge Janet Protasiewicz, the last spring election was for the state Supreme Court justice. It was a spring election with much lower turnout. She won what is now this new 30th by 10 percentage points. So it's flippable. This is very flippable. It's going to be very close.
Okay, so your River Falls was literally cut in half by these maps?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Diabolical.
The town, yep. The city.
Diabolical.
Yep. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And it also makes it hard if I'm the city administrator. Now I have 2 assembly representatives that I really need to work with. The maps should be logical. And I think the maps that have been, the Republican-led legislature accepted and voted in favor of what was initially the maps that Governor Evers put into the mix. And they did that presumably because they thought maybe what the Supreme Court would come up with would be even more in favor of the Democrats. So, but what we really need, is legislation that would put in place a nonpartisan process going forward.
Which is what they did in Michigan. Michigan set up an independent commission to do their maps and said, well, the legislature shouldn't have anything to do with this. They have a vested interest in it. So I support. I think that's fantastic. I'm speaking up because I'm from Wisconsin. I'm up in the 75th. God help us up there. But it's a rural area. But I also think it's, in small rural districts, it's only a few thousand votes. I mean, you're really not talking about large numbers of people. So I wish you the best. I know you're one of 10 legislative assembly districts that are within 2 percentage points of a Biden win or loss. So there's 10 districts that I know are considered very flippable.
The state assembly is focusing on about 15, I think, districts. And of those, the race that I'm in is the tightest. It's the very closest.
Wow.
And it leans, if you look at past elections, it leans ever so slightly to the right, but over time it has been trending blue.
Good. So
we'll see. I have a good shot at this one.
Good.
You mentioned Judge Protasiewicz's election in April. Was it this year or last year? But what was amazing to me about when we were watching the returns come in was the youth vote. and how they just turned out en masse. And in an April election, it just really, blew everyone's mind. So I'm curious, as we're getting to the get out the vote questions that I have for you, have you seen that translating into your own race, where there's a lot of younger volunteers that are signing up and committing to your campaign?
We would love more younger volunteers. We have lots of older volunteers. But having said that, and one of the reasons I'm running, I'm 68 years old. One of the reasons I'm running is because I can. If you're 40 and you've got children and you've got a full-time job, you can't just step away from your job and go take 6 months off and run for office. You can't do it. So I tell the young people, I'm clearing the runway for you. I am clearing this runway. We need young people coming into politics, making a difference. We've got quite a few. We would love even more. I just got a text before I came onto this show saying that we have young people tabling every single day at UW River Falls. So we're working on getting out the vote, getting them out to vote. They will show up. Gen Z, they're showing up to vote. They'll show up to vote, especially for the presidential election. I want to make sure that they know I'm right there at the bottom of the ticket.
Absolutely. I was reading some interesting pieces about how Gen Z grew up under the previous governor's policies, and how they were like, they had to live the effects of that. And now that they're voting, they're like, no, we're not voting to keep these Republican policies going. But I want to, so you're right across the river from the Twin Cities. How can folks help out with either door knocking, voter registration, phone banking, letter writing? How can folks do that?
I got all kinds of ideas for you. So many people, I launch a lot of canvases. People are out there helping, and we are being inundated with awesome volunteers. It's just completely amazing. And people say, thank you for running. Thank you for running. And what I always say back is, don't thank me. Running for office is an honor. It's an incredible honor. And it is so humbling that people drive. We had 2 men from North Dakota coming here to help knock doors in Wisconsin, to help with my campaign. It's completely amazing. And so it's very humbling. It almost brings tears. It does bring tears to my eyes that people are so kind and so giving and so caring. So how can you help? Obviously, at the top of the heap of ways you can help is go knock on those doors, be face-to-face with people, and have conversations. People are very intimidated. I should say first, there are some people who cannot physically knock on doors. Mm-hmm. They just can't physically go out and do this. And great, we're going to find other things you can do to help. If you can physically knock on a door, then go with somebody, like go with a candidate, follow and track with them, and you'll see how really, truly easy it is to have these conversations. Don't go out on your own. Go with someone. So if you can door knock, please do door knock. But if you just can't do it, you just can't bring yourself to do it, other things you can do. Phone calling for sure, writing, like addressing envelopes, addressing postcards.
Hey,
but the other big thing,
Allison,
you have to cut.
I have a break coming up here. Can you stay with us to talk more about this after the break? Okay, great. We are going to take a break here. Alison Page, running in Wisconsin Assembly 30. PageForwardWisconsin.com is the website. We'll see you back after the break. Welcome back to the Matt McNeil Show. I am JP Boghossian. Matt is off today. Our guest, we're continuing on with Alison Page, who is running for the Wisconsin Assembly District 30. Alison, thank you for staying on, because we were getting into something that I really wanted to focus in on today, which is get out the vote. So you were talking about folks from North Dakota who are driving across Minnesota to come and help out your campaign. Love that. With the door knocking, do you offer like training? Like, can people just go out and do it, or how do they connect with you to kind of get the ins and outs and the correct literature to be giving to folks?
Yep, absolutely. So at the Democratic Party office, my campaign manager, Ben Polan, does trainings regularly with people or individually. He'll invite them to go out canvassing with him so they can watch how he does it. He's a pro, and they can, look at what he does. And then you kind of want to develop your own personal style when you're knocking on doors. But you generally find that it's just not that hard. People are nice, and people want to know about candidates for the most part. Some people have their minds made up and they don't, and that's okay. That's okay. So getting out there and doing it, people shouldn't be intimidated by it. I think once they do it a couple times, has been our experience. Once they do it a couple times, they're kind of hooked on it because it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to go meet people and chat with them. And it sounds like it would be intimidating and horrible, but it is not.
I think that
it's not.
That is the stigma, I think. I mean, is it the right word, stigma, that folks have about, thinking, oh, if I go door knocking, I'm going to get pulled into this massive debate with someone and they're going to be like yelling with me and it's going to be such a confrontation. But folks that I've talked to that have door knocking, hearing you say it too, that it's fun, it can be enjoyable. This is something that is very tangible, very helpful. I think door knocking is one of those things that I hear over and over again as one of the most influential things people can do to get out the vote for particular candidates.
Right, but it's not all. It's not all they can do. I think. Do we have time for one last thing?
Oh, yeah, no, go for it. We've got time. I made sure of that. Go for it.
Okay. Well, the other thing that people sometimes are a little shy about doing is relational organizing. Like, who do you know in your neighborhood? Having a gathering at your house and inviting your neighbors and friends in, and inviting a candidate in to meet with them. And not making it like a hot pressure thing to raise money, but just to meet and hear and be able to ask questions to a candidate. And then those people talk to a few other people. The other thing that I've thought of is, and I do for my family, I'm the person in my family who keeps track of politics. So when it comes almost to election time, people are texting me. I had one person text me from the voting booth. Like, tell me about these candidates for school board. I don't know them, which is probably not okay. But so don't be shy about sharing what you know about the candidates. Like, get your Christmas card list out. And if anybody lives in your same area, which they probably do, then, write them a postcard, say, hey, I just looked up about this candidate. I'm really excited about her. You should check her out too. I think she would do a great job for us in the state assembly. So sending out postcards personally from you, people they're not going to throw those in recycling. They're going to read them because they know you. So doing that relationship, really playing into your relationships, sharing your opinion on the issues. Here's what I think about. Here's what I know about this issue. I've done a little research on it. And here's why I think we ought to vote yes or no on that referendum. Of course, I think we should vote no on it. But here's why. I looked it up. And I just got a text like that the other day from a physician I used to work with. And I texted her back. I said, here's the link to the most non-political information related to this referendum. I plan to vote no on it. And, she may just take it, hey, if Allison's voting no, I'll vote no, but here's the information and you should do your own research. So that kind of sharing and getting those conversations going, especially for people who are further down the ballot, people know about the presidents, the candidates for president, but the down ballot races, they might not pay as close attention to. So talking to your friends is a great thing. If you're on Facebook, and a candidate knocks at your door, take a selfie with them and put it up on Facebook and say, look at this candidate out here working and getting to know people. That's what we want, in our state capital. So that relational organizing, relational influencing is really, really important. And that's something you can do without going out knocking on doors.
So what are the big issues that you're finding when those conversations are coming back, when you're hearing them coming back, that, we've knocked on X number of doors, we've had X number of house parties or reaching out to folks. What are those issues that you're hearing as a candidate that are important to voters in your district?
Well, one of the key things you need to know about Western Wisconsin is we get that most voters here don't know what's going on in Madison. It's very, very hard for people here. We see Governor Walz from Minnesota on the news much, much more than we ever see Tony Evers from Wisconsin. So people, it's a communication dead zone here in Western Wisconsin. We don't get the media that would be, here's what happened at the Capitol today. Here's the issues that are front and center. And this is dangerous for many, many reasons. Elected officials can say anything they want in this region, and nobody's really holding them too much to account. So educating people at the doors is pretty key. When I ask people, what's top of mind for you this election season? People will say, I don't know, everything, nothing. I said, well, what's concerning in your life right now? And it's things like the cost of food is crazy. My mortgage is really high. the cost of housing, the cost of living, especially for families. My daughter-in-law was just over at my house this morning. She's feeding 4 kids. She said, I don't even look what the groceries are costing us. I just know we have no extra money at the end of every month. It's all going to food and living expenses, and they have good jobs. And so this is tough. So the cost of living, I think, is a really key thing. And then I educate people a little bit, and some people are concerned about the future of democracy in Wisconsin, but I would say a lot of people are completely unaware. I explain to people what gerrymandering is far more than I hear from people there any concern about democracy. And then, of course, healthcare, women's reproductive healthcare rights. Some of that's an education process as well. People aren't aware of how bad Wisconsin's laws are, even currently. They're not aware of how these are not good laws for our future. So a lot of education, but I'd say the number one thing I hear is the economy, the family, the cost of living for families, especially young families, childcare expenses. Jeepers, it would be nice if I didn't have to commute to the Twin Cities, because a large chunk of people from Pierce, St. Croix counties commute into Minnesota. It'd be great to have great jobs on this side of the river.
Well, thank you very much, Alison, for joining us today on the Matt McNeil Show. We'll be posting all of this to get the word out. Pageforwardwisconsin.com, amazing URL. Good luck on your campaign. We will have more after this break. Matt Caffrey from Swing Left is going to be joining us.
My house, my house.
You're listening to the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and in the evenings on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the nighttime hours in Seattle on 1150 AM KKNW. The voice you're hearing is not Matt McNeil. This is JP Boghossian. Matt is off today. Very happy to be sitting in the chair, holding down the fort, and also very happy for Alison Page to be joining us there to talk about her campaign. And now we have joining us the Senior Director of Organizing at Swing Left, Matt Caffrey. Matt, welcome to the Matt McNeil Show.
Very happy to be a surrogate Matt on the show today. How's it going?
Going well. The theme of this episode, we're taking the opportunity to really highlight get out the vote efforts across the country because, as I said at the top of the show, I'm not hitting the panic button quite yet, but from my perspective, I'm definitely in that danger, Will Robinson phase where I'm feeling a little freaked out about where we're at, the state of the race. So I wanted to ask you, as the senior director at Swing Forward, what is your take on the race right now and where we're at?
Thank you so much for the question. And, I think it is undeniable that we are in an extremely close and competitive race. But what I want to make sure everybody at home thinks about is that every time you hear a pollster or a journalist say that a race is within the margin of error, just translate that in your head to that the race is within the margin of effort. And if we do the work we need to do, we can win this election. We know that is the case. We've lived this before. Swing Left started in 2017. We saw the Herculean effort to win back the House in 2018, to elect Joe Biden and defeat Donald Trump in 2020. We came within a hair's breadth of holding the House in 2022, but held the Senate. And, we are not going back. We are seeing volunteer energy across the country that is absolutely bonkers. Millions of letters written, hundreds of thousands of doors knocked through Swing Left. I know millions across the progressive ecosystem, phone calls, texts, postcards, like the whole gamut, right? And those are the numbers I care about much more than any given poll. I'm a little weary of polls. I'm wary of them as well. We've seen over and over again it's a little bit like astrology, and I'm sort of tired of having my emotional well-being governed by guesswork. And so I choose to focus instead on the number of doors knocked and the number of letters written and the number of calls made, because I think that, look, in 2020, Joe Biden won a pretty commanding victory, and yet still 1/3 of voters did not vote. We had historic voter turnout, and yet 1/3 of voters did not vote. And what we know is that conversations with voters, especially face-to-face conversations at their door, can substantially increase their likelihood to vote. So look, nobody really knows what's going to happen in this election. The polls make us crazy. Turn off the polling, turn off the news, and go knock some doors. Even if you have to drive an hour and a half to get to a competitive district, it's worth it because it will make you feel so much better.
I thank you for saying that, because I feel like I can't even turn on the news anymore because there's always a daily poll that, and I just feel like, within the span of 90 seconds, I can go from, oh, we got this, to I'm leaving the country. And it's just like, it's becoming emotionally exhausting to do that. So first of all, I just want to thank you for margin of effort. And for those folks who are feeling that, the yo-yos and the franticness of the polling and the news media coverage of it, can you take us through tangible things? Because I think that is something when people are freaking out to me, and when I'm freaking out to myself, I'm like, okay, what can I do today? I'm a big writer, so like I'm adopting letter writing through Vote Forward. We're going to be talking about that later in the show. But you're saying that door knocking can be very, very effectual, maybe one of the most things that people can do. So walk us through being able to do something and how that can calm us down. But how can folks specifically get involved with Swing Left?
Well, first of all, right now, folks can go to swingleft.org/action and sign up. You type in your zip code, it will show you multiple options. If you're close to a battleground state or district, it'll show you a canvas. It'll show you an opportunity to make phone calls, maybe to join a letter writing party, to adopt letters on your own that you can just print off at home and write on your own time. You can still make a contribution to candidates that might have a funding gap. So there are a lot of different options, but you'll notice in that tool, the cards are in an order, and that order is on purpose. And door knocking comes first, because we know that that face-to-face conversations with voters cut through like nothing else. And I spent all weekend training canvassers here in Ohio. I live in Columbus, and we have an absolutely must-win Senate race if we're going to hold the United States Senate here. We have to win this race in Ohio. I tell volunteers, get out the vote is a time-tested, it is a documented, it is a validated process. And when we are talking to voters, every word we are saying is intentional. We don't thank them for voting. We thank them for being a voter, because we want to affirm their identity as a voter, which then creates cognitive dissonance if they don't follow through and vote. We are not going to just say, hey, will you make sure to vote by November 5th? We will say, how do you like to vote? How are you going to get there? What time of day are you going to go? Who are you going to bring with you? What kind of voter ID are you going to bring? Because we know the social science teaches us that every step in the process we help them visualize or articulate increases their likelihood to then follow through and vote. So again, this is not just something we do to make ourselves feel better. It does make us feel better, and that's great. But it's researched and it's documented, and there's real social science behind all of this that says this is what works to increase voter turnout. And folks should really feel confident that if they go to that website, swingleft.org/action, and pick one of those actions, they know that what they are doing will be meaningful, and it will be for a race that is competitive, where this kind of organizing can make up that difference. If it's going to be a 10-point race, nothing any of us collectively can do will make all that big a difference, because 10-point races you can't really swing with our field efforts. But when you're talking about these races that are going to be decided by 1, 2, maybe 3 percentage points, the conversations we have with voters, the folks that we engage, really can make a critical difference. And just a really quick example of that, a couple of years ago in Virginia, the Virginia House of Delegates was decided by a single race. That race, wow, I believe, was decided by a single vote. And that district, Swing Left volunteers from GW University had gone to that district the weekend before the election and knocked thousands of doors. So it's just the work that we do can have critically important implications. And look, Virginia, after they won a trifecta in Virginia, they expanded voting rights and they invested in clean energy, and they made it, whatever. They did basically everything we want Democrats to do. So it really, over and over again, we see demonstrations that a handful of votes can have an absolutely massive impact on policy that we care about so much. And it really is within all of our power to sway the number of votes needed to win this election.
For folks who are just tuning in, you're listening to the Matt McNeil Show. Matt is off today. I am guest hosting. I'm JP Boghossian. We're talking with Matt Caffrey from Swing Left. Matt, take us through, because we've got a thing, you know, like a Minnesota nice, Midwest nice, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's a thing. I don't want to like argue it away. It's part of the culture. Can you give us like what the actual like visceral experience is of like, because we know the research is, you know, backs up what you know, and you know that research backs up what you're talking about here, and we want people to go and do it. But there's always, I think, this feeling when I talk to people about door knocking about, well, I don't want to get in and have someone start yelling at me. Or I don't know, I'm going to feel like I'm going to get all flustered and I have to know all the data points about something. Or, you know, what happens if, you know, they've got a gun or something. You know what I mean? Like there's all these things that people have of like, there's this fear, right? Sometimes maybe it's irrational. I'm not quite sure. But give us the actual lived experience of what it's like. Like you're not going alone. You've got a script. There's probably some training. Like walk us through what's actually going to happen to someone when they show up. They've gone to the website, Swing Left, and they're ready to go for door knocking.
I'm so glad you asked. So yes, first of all, remember that we are trying to talk to people we believe are extremely likely to vote for us if they were to vote. We're not going to talk to your MAGA uncle. That's not the goal. In fact, we want to have as little interaction with MAGA voters as humanly possible, because we know, again, the research shows us that if we do talk to them, they're more likely to vote. And that's exactly the opposite of what we want. So we are going and looking for people who are, you know, pretty much on our team already. You know, we might get some folks who are undecided. We might even, no data is perfect. You might occasionally run into a Republican. But if you do, you just say, hey, thanks so much for your time. Have a good day. And you move on. And when you do find somebody undecided, you can have a brief, open-ended, non-judgmental conversation. You're not preaching to them. You don't have to be a policy expert. You just want to make a little bit of a connection with them, find some shared value, and then link it back to your candidate. And you can do that in just a couple of minutes, and it's nothing to be afraid of, because your own personal motivations for supporting the candidate can be really, really compelling to the person you're talking to. But the vast majority of the time, we're not doing any of that. All we're doing is saying, oh, I'm so glad you're supporting Senator Brown as well. You know, how do you normally like to vote? And we're just having a really easy conversation about their voting preferences and helping them literally envision the process of voting. So just one thing on the Midwest Nice, I feel that as an Ohioan, you know, some of the scripts will ask you to confirm that the person at the door is who we're looking for before you introduce yourself. I always train people to flip that. It's like we're Midwesterners. We introduce ourselves first and ask who they are second. I get that. But again, just remember, we're not soliciting. We're not asking people for a favor. We're not challenging people or anything. We are inviting people to be a part of our democracy. And fundamentally, we are thanking them, again, for being a voter. We're trying to affirm that identity in them. These conversations are really friendly. We had a bus from New York to Pennsylvania over the weekend, and I was reading through the responses from the passengers. And like to every single person who wrote about their experience just raved about how positive it was and the great conversations they had and how friendly everyone was to them. And they're all like planning to come back, which just makes me really, really happy as an organizer. But, you know, the other thing is like Kamala Harris has brought a lot of joy into this race. So if you're out knocking doors right now, the voters are really excited to vote for Kamala Harris, and they're feeling, you know, this is very different than if you knock doors like I did in 2022 when the world felt pretty bleak. This is feeling really good. So again, if you're a little bit more shy, if you're a little bit more introverted, if you're a little unsure, know that you will be trained. You will have support. You will be engaging friendly voters. You will have a script. You don't have to know everything. Your own personal reasons for wanting to volunteer are really powerful, for voters to hear. And yeah, if you want to go with a partner, you can. Like, you can get paired up at a staging location, or you can bring a friend. That's even better. And really, people who walk away from doing this just rave about the experience that they're having. And sometimes they are like, I didn't get to talk to that many people, but I'm still really glad I did it, right? There's nothing to be afraid of here.
I love that, folks. So you're talking to folks who are most likely going to be voting for Democrats. They're on our side. You get to go with a friend or a buddy, a door-knocking buddy. Like, you get the script. We need to be knocking on as many doors as possible. And you brought up 2022 and how it was feeling bleak. I'm curious, given the scope and the breadth of your wisdom and expertise in this organizing, how is this cycle stacking up towards the other ones? Because every single cycle kind of feels like this one's the end of the world, and then somehow it seems to get worse. And this next one, this is the end of the world, and it starts to become a little bit exhausting. So I'm curious, because you have data, you know how many, like the quality of the conversations you're having, the quantity of the conversations. How is this election cycle kind of stacking up to those previous cycles of like 2022 and 2020?
Yeah, well, we're not all locked in our house, terrified of a global pandemic. So, and the existential dread we all had in 2020 was pretty bad. I honestly, as stressed as we are now, and of course, I would say I'm not stressed because of the odds. I'm stressed because of the stakes. Right? I am stressed because of what would happen if the former president were to be reelected. And frankly, because of the incredible progress we could make if we can elect Democrats at the federal level and in key states, right? So that's what stresses me, but it's not the odds. I mean, I feel like I would, to quote some other folks like Tom Bonnier or whatever, I would much rather be us than them, right? We have a lot of advantages, I think. Kamala Harris is far more popular than Donald Trump. She communicates to voters that she cares about people like them in a way that he does not. There's a lot of ways in which we actually have the upper hand. The Electoral College makes things a little bit challenging, but we can work through that by organizing really well, which I think Kamala's campaign has been doing an incredible job. So that gives me a lot of confidence too. But so I would say we're not in the same existential, it feels like the world is ending. We're locked in our house. The stakes are crazy. The other thing is like Kamala Harris decides which electoral votes or to count or not count, you know what I mean? In a way that I did not have a lot of confidence in Pence to administer the elections, or in the Trump administration in general to facilitate the transfer of power. Now Biden is responsible for transferring power, and I just fundamentally trust him much more. So there are some things in which this actually feels less terrifying to me. Some of it is, like I said, just sort of circumstantial. But, the election this makes me feel most similar to is 2008 when I was a student. And the energy was incredible. And the grassroots was so fired up. I'm joining a call this week that's called Gamers for Harris. I'm
hearing the music. I apologize for that. We're coming up on our break this segment. Matt Caffrey, Senior Director of Organizing at Swing Left. Thank you for joining us on the Matt McNeil Show.
Try to make it last.
Welcome back to the Matt McNeil Show. Matt is off today. I am JP Boghossian, regularly hosting The Gailey Show, and this career book saved my life here on the weekends on AM 950. Oh, those were two really amazing conversations with Alison Page and with Matt Caffrey. I'm really glad that we had those because it's calming me down a little bit, trying to read the news all the time. And, we actually went longer on those interviews because they were both so amazing.
Yeah, I thought Matt has a national perspective, and there's just no replacement for that. You can get in we've heard one of the biggest problems is that people aren't hearing the truth. There's a group of people in a bubble. I think it's on the other side. They might think it's on our side where they're not hearing anything but one perspective, and he's got to hear a lot more from his vantage point. So that is encouraging. The energy is hard to judge as an individual, but he can certainly judge it where he is.
It was really interesting. I had thoughts, formerly working in broadcast TV, about when Alison was saying that in Western Wisconsin they hear more from Minnesota elected officials than they do from Madison elected officials. And I just remember because I was working for two TV stations in Michigan, Northern Michigan and Western Michigan, and there was, as the local newspapers started to go away or when they became more advertiser focused, it kind of became this thing where the news wasn't getting to them. And TV could only do so much, right? Because it was on, maybe a half hour or an hour, each day, or it wasn't getting to those particular communities. And so I think that there is something moving forward that, stations like this one, AM 950, listening, you don't have to be, in the Twin Cities to listen to it. You can listen to it everywhere you get your podcasts, and on YouTube and on our website, am950radio.com. But where I'm going with that, and I want to get to letter writing here, Jim, because you do a lot of letter writing, and I think it's really interesting, and I want to hear more about that. But for folks who are listening, whether it's here in the cities or in Chicago or Seattle, Project 2025 is talking about going after what they consider to be progressive media. And, Trump can sit there and say all day long that he doesn't know what Project 2025 is and he's never read it. Well, he is bringing on folks now, reported by – I saw another one, a report last week from Newsweek, where he's bringing on contributors to Project 2025 onto his campaign, right? His VP candidate wrote the intro to a book by one of the contributors to Project 2025, right? Like his fingerprints are all over this. And so if you enjoy this station, if you enjoy your local, WCPT 820, your local station in Seattle, 1150 AM KKNW, they're at risk if he gets back into the White House. Project 2025 is a risk. So I want to talk about – we're talking about today, getting out the vote. And Jim, for a number of election cycles now, and I've been so impressed by this, and I'm going to be doing it myself this election cycle, is Vote Forward, where you're adopting voters, potential voters by batches of 10 or 20, and you're writing letters to them. Tell us more about that.
Well, it was founded in 2017, and the idea was there are people who might agree with a progressive point of view, but there's a lot of people that aren't as dedicated voters as you and I are. So it's something they do sometimes, which is astonishing to me. And so they do have these lists of folks you can select in as small a batch as 5, and they're in a particular state, and what we know about them is that they have voted Democratic in the past or periodically. And so what this is intended to do is give them a little nudge and to say from an individual person, hey, I think voting is important because, it's a form you're filling out. I think voting is important because, and you say this is why I think you should vote. It's not partisan. You're not advocating for a party or a candidate, but you're saying, I think you should vote. I think it would be great if you would vote. And then you personally address the envelope, their name and address, and you sign it with your name, and you put your return address on it. And by a certain date, I think it's the 29th of October, you send these off. So I've sent some to Colorado this year. I've sent some to Wisconsin this year. And in years past, I've sent them to Texas. So you can select the state if they have names. If they don't, you might have to pick a different state. But it's very you can do it in small batches so you don't feel overwhelmed. There is a cost. You have to put postage on it and have envelopes, and there's some effort. But it feels very low impact on my brain anyway, and fairly simple. And you have accomplished something and communicated to an individual person. A la door knocking, maybe not as one-to-one as that, but it feels like I've done something. And that's the main value of it, I think.
Well, also, as I was looking at the instructions, it's really interesting. You're not just telling people to vote or asking them or giving them the resources. You're also saying, I vote because healthcare is important to me, or I vote because, I want our roads and transportation fixed, and this is a state election, right, that you get to be voting on as a potential voter. I like that you're not necessarily telling people. And it was interesting, the research is saying when you do have a partisan message, it actually turns people off. But when you're talking about a particular issue, it turns people on to wanting to vote. And again, these are potential Democratic voters. So it's a really slick system. The website is voteforward.org or .com?
.org, I believe.
Okay,
let's check that.
Yeah, no, let's look that up, because I think that I love what Matt Caffrey from Swing Left had to say, that it's not the margin of error, it's the margin of effort.
Right.
And we don't want to wake up on Wednesday, November 6th, and go, oh no. Right. We don't want to have that feeling. And so I think that it's really important that we are doing – go ahead.
It is .org.
Okay, voteforward.org. I was looking at it this morning, and there are, dozens of states. I'm going to be focusing on Pennsylvania. I want to send lots of letters. Forgot the word I was literally just talking about. Lots of letters to Pennsylvania, because I think that's obviously going to be an important state. But folks can pick what they think is going to be an important state to them. And I think it was also very inspiring to hear that there were folks from North Dakota that were driving all the way to western Wisconsin to door knock. That was just really impressive. Chicago and Seattle, thank you for listening. Matt will be back tomorrow. Minnesota, Hour 2 is coming up here with Dale Stark from Hennepin Arts. We're giving away tickets to Harry's Situation at the Landmark Theater on October 23rd. And AM 950's very own Philip Anthony is going to be here to talk about door knocking. Have a great day, everyone. Coming to you live from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. This is the Matt McNeil Show. Unfortunately, I'm not Matt. Matt is off today. We'll be back tomorrow. My name is JP Boghossian, regularly hosting The Gailey Show and the GLAAD Media Award nominated This Queer Book Saved My Life, both of which air at 2 and 2:30 p.m. every Saturday afternoon. Joining me in the studio is Jim Pounds, my executive producer for both of those shows. And Patrick is also here on the board helping us out. Hi, Patrick.
How's it going, guys?
It is going well. I am very pleased for our next guest, Dale Stark, the Director of Marketing and Communications with Hennepin Arts, is here to talk with us about Hennepin Arts and all of the great things that they've coming out for us to go and see. So, Dale, welcome to the Matt McNeil Show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So glad to have you here. So you all have a show opening on October 15th, which, if my calendar is correct, is tomorrow.
Yes.
Tell us all about it.
24 hours from now, yeah. We've got a brand new musical called Some Like It Hot playing through Sunday. It is based on the movie, and it is phenomenal. It's instant Broadway classic.
I can't believe it took this long to come up with a musical.
I think the movie came out in 1959, I think. Jack Lemmon was in it. Marilyn Monroe was in it.
Yep.
The stage version obviously is a little bit different. First of all, it's in color. And they've got this amazing tap dance number in the middle of the show. And it's just, it has the same sensibilities of the movie, where it's kind of a wacky caper. These two musicians witness a mob hit, and in order to escape Chicago, they need to disguise themselves as part of a touring all-female band. So with those gangsters hot on their heels, so to speak, chaos ensues.
Well, and the movie starred Jamie Lee Curtis's father. I guess we're getting to that age now where we don't refer to Tony Curtis, but Jamie Lee Curtis's father. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I wonder if she was older. I bet she's older now than he was in it when he was in it.
Probably.
Wow. So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, when I saw this last spring, I think it was, and watching it, it feels like it's a revival, because most people may be somewhat familiar, at least with the title. But while watching it, it feels like it's old classic Broadway, and it's a revival, but it's a brand new show. And so I think with that sort of big, grand production value, you feel like you're not necessarily watching another movie made into a musical. And I found that really interesting, because it does kind of capture you right from the start and takes you all the way through, and you have a good time.
That's great. And in November, I'm just saying this to the person across the room from me here, I mentioned that Les Miserables is coming back, which is something that he has not seen live in the theater, and so we will rectify that in November, but that's also coming up.
Yeah, we'll have that show coming up in November for 2 weeks. We have Les Mis, or we've been having it almost every other year, right in that sort of sweet spot around Thanksgiving to Christmas. So it's a heavy show. It's a long show. It's a powerful show, and it's certainly a great break from either the beginning of holiday stress or for the end of holiday stress. It's nice to escape, especially right now. And hopefully after the election, we'll be escaping to celebrate.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, so I have and I know Book of Mormon is coming after that, which is that at the State again? Because that's where we had seen it previously, was at the State. Is that at the State or in the Big House?
It's in the Big House.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had that for a week in December, right before Christmas, which, again, it's maybe a little bit older, not quite the family of four. There's some language in it, but it's been around for a long time. It's one of those shows that will just keep enduring time.
It's a crowd,
because it is.
It's a crowd pleaser, I would say.
Oh yeah, and it's incredibly funny.
Yeah.
So, and it also has sort of a big Broadway feel to it because they do have some really big Broadway song and dance numbers.
Right. Well, so tell us. I'm curious about. Hennepin Theater Trust was the name of the entity that really dominates Hennepin Avenue, the Orpheum, the State, the Pantages, and Dudley Riggs is still what's in my head, but that space on Hennepin Avenues. But now we're calling it Hennepin Arts. What is the impetus for that?
So, last June 14th, I remember that day fondly because we relaunched a brand new brand, Hennepin Arts. We relaunched a brand new website, and we went on sale with the musical Back to the Future. So that was a pretty busy day for Dale. But leading up to that was about a year to a year and a half of planning. We were able to pay off the city bonds with which held the lease over the three historic theaters on Hennepin Avenue. So that's the Orpheum, the State, and the Pantages. And we were able to pay those bonds off with another financer, which meant that there was kind of a trickle-down effect because of holding a city lease required X, Y, and Z. Right. And suddenly X, Y, and Z were gone, and we were able to sort of merge several different entities under the Hennepin Theater Trust umbrella. And that took about 18 months leading up to just this past July 1st. So now everything, every staff person, every operation, every arm of the previous organizations are all housed now under Hennepin Arts. So when we were going through that sort of merger, we were also coincidentally looking at a brand refresh, which led to a complete overhaul. And we spent many, many Zoom meetings talking about sometimes the most boring things in the world, like fonts and, whether or not the little serif on a font should be smaller or bigger. But there was a lot of very in-depth research and work and inspection done across the board on all our properties. So we felt that Hennepin Arts was a little more representative. By not having theater in the name, we were being more inclusive of the arts that, for instance, public art, like street banners, street murals, education programs. And when people think of theater, they may mostly think of Broadway or musicals. Obviously, we've got a lot more than just musicals on all our stages. So it's it did not go lightly. There was a lot of work involved, and it's been a lot of fun. And I will say this is sort of a way random side note, but when we went to Hennepin Arts, a lot of us were very happy because we were removing the word theater from our email addresses. So in the past, we would always have to be like dale.stark@hennepintheatertrust.org, theater with an R-E. We had to add that every single time we gave an email address out. So now it's just Hennepin Arts. So it's super easy and, easy to find us on the web, or easy to find our website. So it's been a little challenging in terms of really corralling all of that. On top of all of that, we also welcomed a brand new CEO and president last June, Todd Dusing, who just came in with this boldness and this vision of what can be. And so it's been exciting and it's been tiring all at the same time.
And from a theater goer's perspective, there's not really a noticeable change. It's more like internally streamlined. Is that right? I mean, or will there be new programming or new locations or will it be something that the theater goer will recognize?
Well, hopefully we'll see a more consistent customer experience throughout the three theaters, as well as the Dudley Riggs Theater. Prior to the merger, Dudley Riggs was it's on an island by itself, and now that's been folded into all of the operations of our three historic theaters. Yep. And having a little bit more of a direct line of oversight, management, and communication with front of house staff, bartenders, concessions, ushers, ticket takers, box office. We're hoping that we'll start seeing more cohesiveness. So if someone goes to the state and then goes to Dudley Riggs, they're going to have a very similar experience.
Interesting. That's interesting.
When I moved to the Twin Cities, it was just so delightful to see the commitment to the theatrical arts, I guess, going from the Theater Trust to Hennepin Arts, that it was just, it is really special to see the shows that you're programming and bringing in, but also just how accessible Minneapolis, downtown, and you all make it for folks to be able to go and see these shows. We're really lucky, I think, to have Hennepin Arts right here in our metro area and serving us here on Hennepin Avenue. Dale, tell us, how do people get tickets to Some Like It Hot?
Oh, Hennepin, gosh, it's still taking a while not to say Hennepin Theater Trust, but if they go to hennepinarts.org, they can navigate right to the Some Like It Hot page and buy their tickets there through Ticketmaster. Or if you want to save on fees, you can always go to the State Theater box office, Monday through Friday, 12 to 5. That might be a little better. You do save those fees, and then you do get a little bit more service in terms of picking out your seats. Yeah. So you don't necessarily feel that rush. I've got to click purchase before these seats go.
Yep.
So
as a theater goer, I love the State Theater box office, and I highly recommend people do that. And it's worth the extra effort to talk to somebody and you have a little back and forth and feel like you walk away with what you were looking for and what you were hoping for. So the service there is great, and I highly recommend doing it in person if you can, if it's practical.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm so excited because with the merger and everything, those box office people are amazing. They're stellar. They're the front line.
Yep.
They're the ones that will get thanked like crazy when someone gets a really great pair of seats, and they're the ones that will be yelled at when they realize that they've come late and they have to wait for a hold.
Yep.
So it is, like you said, you get that experience before you even step foot in the theater, and that's always we're hoping to really maximize that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Well, and then, we also have a student rush 2 hours before showtime at the Orpheum Theater, $40 to you can buy up to 2 tickets for students and educators with ID. Cash only.
That's good to know. I mean, I'm not in education anymore, but I'll let my former colleagues know about that. Dale Stark, Director of Communications and Marketing at Hennepin Arts. Thank you very much for joining us on the McNeil Show.
Thank you so much. Bring me back anytime.
Absolutely.
I'm always happy to talk.
Well, folks, we are going to take a break here. When we come back, we are giving away tickets to Harry's Situation with the amazing trans comedian and storyteller Alok. Will be here on October 23rd. So stay tuned. We'll see you after this quick break.
What a relief that would be.
This is the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950 KTNF, the delightfully progressive voice of Minnesota. This voice, as you can probably tell, is not Matt McNeil. This is JP Boghossian, host of The Gailey Show and the GLAAD Media Award nominated This Queer Book Saved My Life. Matt is off today. He will be back tomorrow. And as the host of The Gailey Show, I am super happy to be giving away tickets for Harry's Situation at the Landmark Theater on October 23rd by the amazing trans comedian and storyteller Alok. That's A-L-O-K. If you haven't seen Alok, they were most recently on the Hannah Gadsby comedy special on Netflix that happened earlier this year. And sometimes it's even better if you don't know who Alok is and just go in and enjoy the amazing storytelling and comedy that they put together. So how are we giving away tickets? We're actually going to do it two ways. So we give away tickets to folks who follow us on our Gailey Show Instagram channel, which is at @the_Gailey Show. We get tickets. We're really lucky. And so we thought, hey, for folks that are following us on The Gailey Show, so two lucky people have been chosen at random. I didn't select them because I knew them. They were completely at random. Two people right now have messages in their inbox on Instagram from me saying they've been selected to have tickets. And then giving them away right now. So you just call in. I'm going to give them to the first 3 callers who call in today. You get a pair of tickets, so not just for you, a pair of tickets. The number is 952-946-6205. That number, call in. First 3 callers. I feel like I keep hitting the microphone. I feel like a real radio DJ when I say first 3 callers, 952-946-6205. We'll be giving away these tickets. We're really happy, I guess I'm speaking for you, Jim, to be guesting here for Matt McNeil today, to be able to have these conversations about Get Out the Vote, because it has just been on my mind getting out the vote for people here in not just Minnesota, but how can folks in Minnesota help people who are also in Wisconsin or other parts of it was amazing for folks who maybe didn't hear our first hour. You can check it out on our YouTube channel at am950radio.com and everywhere you get your podcast. But we got to talk to Alison Page, who is running for the Wisconsin Assembly District 30. And Alison was talking about how people from North Dakota were driving across to help door knock for her in western Wisconsin. I know I keep repeating it, but I love that. And that's things that we could do here in Minnesota, driving to, those swing states.
Well, we know people that have come from Minnesota to Wisconsin to try to influence the outcome there. And she mentioned that there are 15 assembly districts that WisDems is focusing on. And guess how many seats we need to take over control of the Wisconsin Assembly?
I don't know how many.
15.
Ooh.
That's why they're concentrating on 15. They've picked the 15 seats that are most likely or that we have the best chance of flipping and being able to take control of that body. And what a great day that will be. I will buy a bottle of champagne on that day because that will be a big step towards sanity. So I'm very excited for that.
Yes, we have to flip. We have to flip those 15. So the call-in number here is 952-946 946-6205. We're taking the first 3 callers to give away tickets to Harry's Situation by Alok. And just to tell you a little bit about Alok, so they are an internationally acclaimed poet, comedian, public speaker, and actor. They've had literary works like Beyond the Gender Binary, Your Wound, My Garden. They have performed in over 40 countries. They've headlined Just for Laughs comedy festivals. They were recently on, as I said, the Netflix is a Joke Festival in Los Angeles, and we're also part of that Hannah Gadsby TV special on Netflix, which if you haven't seen it, it is phenomenal. But they are also the subject of the docu-short, so a short documentary called Alok, which was executive produced by Jodie Foster. Made its debut just this year at the Sundance Film Festival. So it is going to be a great show. I'm actually kind of bummed, not going to be here down to go and see it. I'm looking up here the description of the show. So it says, in their new stand-up show, Harry Situation, Alok keeps finding himself in hairy situations, being mistaken as a mega-famous Brazilian DJ, botching TikTok makeup tutorials, signing up for an appointment at the European Wax Center, a.k.a. Taylor Swift's tortured poets department. This show, it is described as flippant and fabulous and wicked sharp and delightfully silly. So we are giving out, for the first 3 callers, you can get a pair of tickets. Our number is 952-946-6205. That number is 952-946-6205. Or for followers of The Gaily Show on Instagram, you may have in your DMs, direct messages from me right now, a message thanking you as one of our followers. You have a pair of tickets waiting for you to the show that is going to be on October 23rd. We're going to keep doing that, by the way, on the Instagram channel. So when we've got, on the Gaily Show's Instagram channel, we're really going to be kind of focusing on, queer LGBTQ performances and performers and, storytellers that are coming into the Twin Cities. So if you yourself love those and want to support the community, or folks who are part of the community that want to be part of that, it's really easy. All you got to do is follow us on Instagram at @the_Gaily Show. And we just pick followers at random. I mean, we make sure that it's at random. I'm not literally picking friends or anything like that. We use a whole little thing to select followers at random to be able to give them these tickets and be able to share the wealth that we receive here at the station.
One thing I want to mention, when I look up Alok's performance, it says Uptown Theater, and I've heard you say Landmark Theater, and so I don't know. I remember the Uptown Theater on Hennepin Avenue, but I wonder if it's perhaps changed its name to the Landmark. That's a question I have. I'll also mention the fact that this young person, they are young, my God, is originally from College Station, Texas. So I imagine they've probably got some pretty fascinating stories about what that was all about growing up in I don't think College Station is, much of a metropolis, but that must have been quite an experience to grow up there, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you fact-checked me. It is at the Uptown Theater,
okay.
According to Ticketmaster.
Well, and Landmark there's an ownership thing between the old Uptown and Landmark, which is the movie theater, is kind of across the road, if you will. And so I'm not sure. We should probably I can imagine people going one place and it's across the street. But you know what I mean? They're right there. You can't throw a golf ball without hitting both of them. So they're very close to each other, but that might be a point of clarification.
It is at the Uptown.
So that's on the west side of
Fact checked on my own show.
Sorry, it's
testing.
It's Lagoon and Hennepin Avenue. Then it would be the Uptown Theater.
So again, that number is 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. It's been really nice to be able to focus on getting out the vote information, and we are going to talk with AM 950's very own Philip Anthony. We're going to take a break right here. But when we come back, we will have Philip Anthony, who is the host of the Downright Upright show and also has been doing a lot of door knocking for this election cycle. And because the theme of the past 2 hours has been around getting out the vote, we're very happy to have Philip join us and to talk all about that. So we're going to take a break now. We'll see you on the flip side. This is the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950 KTNF, broadcasting from St. Louis Park. Are we in St. Louis Park?
I think we're in Eden Prairie.
In Eden Prairie.
The license is St. Louis Park.
As you can hear, this is not Matt McNeil. Matt is off today. He will be back in the chair tomorrow. Joining me here in the studio is the executive producer of the shows that I host, The Gailey Show and This Career Book Saved My Life, Jim Pounds.
Hello.
Also with us, the ever amazing Patrick. Hi, Patrick. How are you doing?
Hey, everybody. Hi, Philip.
And
Hi,
Philip
Patrick.
is here. Yes, our very own host of the Downright Upright show, which airs every Saturday at 5 p.m.
I would like to describe him as the understated Philip Anthony.
Well, I thank you guys for having me on the show. I want to be a little serious for a moment. I know that's odd for me, but, you were talking about door knocking before. It is such an essential thing to do.
Oh, let's jump in. Let's talk about it. So the entire past hour and a half, we've been talking about get out the vote, get out the vote, how to do that, going about it. We had Alison Page from the Wisconsin Assembly District 30 and her campaign talking about door knocking. We had Matt Caffrey, Senior Director of Organizing at Swing Left, talking about door knocking and other ways, right, of getting out the vote. But it just feels to me, and I know that, the three of us really have been having conversations about how intense and kind of scary this election feels, and so finding very tangible, concrete ways to help get out the vote, I think, calms me down. At least I'll speak to speaks to myself. And I also like how Matt said, this isn't a margin of error election. This is a margin of effort election, and so we need everybody to be taking some effort. And so, Philip, you've been door knocking, and I want to hear about that.
Yeah, well, your representative from Swing Left had it right. Door knocking is so important because you have that face-to-face connection with the person. It's not like, impersonal. Because, when I'll be honest with you, when I get a text message, after I gave so many times, you're like, But when you have a face-to-face connection, the first thing I do, they usually have me do the talking, figure out
Really?
that.
Huh.
Well, there's a person that has, I think it's called Minivan. It's an app that you stay in the background and they find the name of the person, the address, and then her name is Mary. You say, hi, Mary. Is this Mary? Are you Mary? Yes. Well, I'm from the DFL, and I'm here to find out if you are going to be voting in this election. You'll get a response, and then from there you take the ball and run with it. So if they're not interested in the DFL, they're going to tell you that, and they'll pretty much just close the door and then whatever. But some of them may engage you, and if they engage you too much and they're really feeding you, Voldemort's talking point, that's not going anywhere. They're stalling you. And that's what they do. So don't, go with that because time is of the essence. You want to get as many doors knocked on as possible.
That's a really important point. I mean, you had told me that story before, and I have never heard that. And it's alarming that they would literally deceive you into a conversation so that you can't get to as many doors. That is about as unethical as human beings can be. So it's so interesting that that's a tactic that you've encountered. I really want to make sure people understand that.
Yeah, and I think that's what I liked about talking to Matt and Swing Left is how they're curating their lists, right? So that they're doing it in a way to make sure that you're not getting, So I'm not quite sure this is Minivan. I know that Swing Left, and Matt was sort of talking about how with Swing Left and you go in and you put your zip code and they let you know what are the door knocking and other, phone banking and writing letter campaigns that are the nearest to you that you can join. what I appreciated about what Swing Left is doing, and I don't know how they're doing it, but they're curating it in a way where you're talking more towards, Democrat-leaning, independent-leaning folks who won't do what you were experiencing. Philip.
That's a great segue to what I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
There are new buildings being built in my area. Hence, you don't have any idea if they swing to the left or they swing to the right. So it's pretty much a crapshoot at that point. So I was there with another representative that's running from in my area, and someone again with minivan trying to track which way this person's voting. And so it's pretty much you really don't know what they're going to do. But in my experience, luckily, this whole building, I had 2 negative people out of, almost 180 doors. So that was amazing. And this man, one of these people, wanted us out of the building. He was going to call the management. and I said, you can't do that because the actual candidate is here. These are her constituents. So she has every right to be here. And then he didn't know what to say, But the point I'm making is sometimes you will get a door, but you just be friendly, be yourself. Hi, I'm with the DFL. I'm wondering if you're intending to vote this election. And you'll get a response, and then you take the ball and run with that. Then they say, oh, yeah, I'm with the DFL. And then from there, you go, oh, what issues are important to you? And you engage in conversation that way. So, yeah.
How many times have you gone out, Philip? I know it's more than once.
I think 3 at this point.
And always in Minnesota or always Minneapolis? Or?
Well, it's always been Minnesota, but, you had a guest on, I think, at the beginning of your show, you guys. And she's from Wisconsin.
From Hudson.
And she went, right across the border. Yeah. And I'm wondering, maybe on the air, I'm going to get you guys to want to do some door knocking in Wisconsin. Wow. I'll go with you. Yeah. Because this is so, I'm getting PTSD. I told you before, I'm so scared about this because you hear all these polls and I don't believe polls because young people don't answer the phone and engage that way. So go to the Secretary of State, Minnesota Secretary of State website if you're not registered to vote. And Steve Simon, great Secretary of State, it tells you how to register, where you're going to be voting, the whole 9 yards. So please do it. Please, please, please.
It is kind of astonishing. I don't mean to jump in, but it's astonishing to me that anyone of any political point of view would say in a democracy, I don't think everybody ought to vote. That's that is something that I cannot get my semi-logical head around. Why wouldn't you want everyone to vote and then see what kind of government results from that? Mm-hmm. I don't know. We don't even know because we can't even get – I'm hoping this year we'll get a 69% turnout nationwide.
Yeah.
And that's terrible to think of that.
Jim, the people that they're trying to disenfranchise happen to be African Americans,
right,
and people who tend not to vote their way.
Right.
So they're picking their voters.
It's dishonest. Right.
Duh, yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Well, there was
and so I'm tired of them picking us. We should be picking them.
Right.
It's all backwards.
Right.
And JP and I were talking about this morning at the studio when I was doing my show, which happens to be on Saturdays at 5 p.m. So please tune in. We have all DFLers on, as you know, for the rest of the month. Everybody running for DFL, they're going to tell you what their platform is, why it's important to vote DFL. It's incredible what they're saying on these shows. So please tune in. But what JP and I were talking about is the polls. I don't heed polls very well anymore. Maybe back in the days of Walter Cronkite, when they would call you on the landline and tell you, it's not like that anymore, guys. No, young guys, young girls, they don't pick up the phone. They really do not. They go to voicemail and they don't respond. Yeah. So what do you guys think about that, about polls?
I went on a rant this past summer when I was lucky enough to be asked to guest here on the Matt McNeil show, and I guess I get to pull up my rant again. No, I think that there are to your point of what you're saying there, Philip, and I'm saying this as someone who got a public affairs degree. Like my graduate degree was in public affairs, and so we spent a lot of time dealing with data and analytics and how do you use survey instruments and polling to help impact public affair policy, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we look at these, polls are such a snapshot, and they are intended to be a snapshot, and you've got things like margin of error, but a lot of times they don't talk about margin of error, right? Or they'll say, and it's this weird thing that they'll do where they'll frame it as if it's like the supreme truth. Like, oh, Kamala is 49, Trump is at 48. That's the state of the race. Oh, by the way, there's a margin of error of 3%. But right now, she's leading. And it's like, no, folks, that's not how this works, right? And so margin of error, I think, is really important. I think also looking at, like, is it a registered voter poll or a likely voter poll? I think that's really important to look at. You can be registered and haven't voted for, X number of years. I usually don't know how they're determining likely voter. Like, is this someone that just says, oh, yeah, I'm planning to vote? Or is it someone who is actually saying, yes, I did vote in 2022 and I voted in my primary? And you know what I mean? Like, how are they determining what a likely voter is? And then, like you said, like, who are they getting, to participate in these? And you get these weird, wild answers all the time. If you listen to Steve Kornacki, who I absolutely adore, on MSNBC.
He's in our community.
And he's also in the community, right?
Yay.
I've pondered getting the Steve Kornacki outfit costume, the khakis and the white shirt to go for Halloween.
Kornacki khakis.
The Kornacki khaki. But he also, he talks about how hard it is to actually get to find MAGA voters, right, who will participate in these polls, right? So he's saying that maybe sometimes that's why their ability is their standing isn't accurately represented in these polls, and why we saw what happened in 2016, right? There's also the phenomenon of people telling pollsters something because they don't want to admit that they're actually, you know what I mean? They don't want to admit that they're voting for a Republican, or they don't want to admit that they're voting for a Democrat, and so they say what, they're supposed to say, right? So there's that going on. And so it's really – you want to have the polls emotionally because they're there and you want to see them. But even the aggregators, there's the CNN poll of polls, and there's the BS that's 538. And I know Nate Silver's gone. I literally will go down this rabbit hole. But Nate Silver, do not listen to whatever Nate Silver is saying. I cannot stand that guy. But the aggregate polls, right, there used to be – we have a bunch of these websites. The Republicans got wise to it. And so they've got a lot of these firms that are coming up with junk polls that get pulled into these aggregators to make it seem like the Republicans are doing better than they actually are. Right. So this whole system just feels like that's the thing, though, is that a poll is not supposed to be biblical truth. A poll is a snapshot, but the way that we're weaponizing those polls, and even like NBC News, I was really upset with NBC News over the weekend and MSNBC because of that, because they did this new poll. It is one poll, and I understand they were the news network that had to, they commissioned the poll, and so they're dictating to all of their, their various entities, you have to report on our poll. We just did a poll, but it was one poll. And she was down 5 points from September, and so they made it sound like it was the apocalypse.
Yeah, I think I saw that. And actually, I'm going to make everybody out there in TV and radio land very happy. Alan Lichtman. Do you guys know who Alan Lichtman is?
The guy who's he's predicted he's the keys guy, right? He has like 7 keys or 15 keys.
I think it's 13. I could be wrong, keys. But he predicted that my vice president, Miss Kamala Harris, is going to win this election. When I heard that, I was thrilled because he's gotten it right every time. And even the Al Gore one, he said he was right because they didn't allow them to continue counting the votes in 2000.
Right.
And so he would have gotten all of them right had they allowed him. The Supreme Court said, no, don't count.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that.
And he did project that, he predicted the I can't even say his name, but Trump, he predicted that Trump was
him.
going to win. And everybody at the time was like, how dare you? All those folks like Michael Moore. Voldemort. I don't want to reference that author either, frankly, but
Oh well, yeah. But she turned out to be a horrible human being. What she's doing. I mean,
when you have a platform that's big, and this is the way that you choose to use it, and I don't even want to like folks who are listening. You're like, what are you talking about? You can Google it. 'Cause I'm not even going to waste my breath talking about that author. But I think that it's we get all the polls. But also there is, and we didn't get to this today, and I had a lot of thoughts about the media coverage of the race as well. But you can sit there and see these polls, and everything's bad for Kamala, everything's bad for Biden, everything's always bad for the Democrats, and she raised like $1 billion. I'm not saying that like being hyperbolic. She literally, the Harris Walz campaign has raised over $1 billion since she got into the race.
You're telling the truth.
And when you read the headlines, it's she raised $1 billion. Here's why it's not enough.
Right? And her ground game. Now the ground game is usually something that they point to say this is a good ground game. They're going to get the voters to be engaged, right? Her ground game is like never before. Look at me. I mean, I'm on my 4th door knock this week. I'm going to be doing. I mean, I've never been so engaged. And I think so are the listeners out there. They're probably doing something, either postcards or if you don't even feel, I mean, there is texting. Yes, you can do that, but I think the face-to-face, like I had mentioned to you before, is the best way to engage with a voter. And you don't have to have, you don't have to be like sitting there for 20 hours talking to them. If you see that they're trying to, twist your words and stuff, don't engage because they're trying to stall you. And because, time's of the essence, you got to get as many doors knocked on as possible because they do give you quite a few doors. I don't know if you guys have done it on Minivan, but there's a whole list of people and you feel bad if you don't finish it, but sometimes you don't because you may get a positive door and they're engaging you and you don't want to just walk away, and so that can happen. But again, go to the Minnesota Secretary of State website, okay, and get yourself registered. I think I was looking. I think it's November 4th is the date. You have to have your ballot in, so make sure it's in early as possible. For
if you're doing a mail-in ballot, but also expanded. So right now there's select locations where you can vote early in person. On the 18th of October, there's going to be a lot more that open up. And so you don't – I'm also starting to say, the election isn't November 5th. November 5th is the last day of voting.
Yes, thank you. That's you read
Get
my mind.
Get in there now. Vote
yes, earlier
now.
the better. Because I mailed my ballot out the minute I got it. Early voting, like a week ago, whenever it was, it's out. I mailed because if there's a snowstorm or something happens on election day, let's say there's something, you need to get there and you can. So make sure you do vote early because that's the best method of voting.
Yeah. Patrick, how are we doing on time?
Doing pretty well. We're going to have to slip in one more break here with apologies to Philip.
Oh, yeah. Let's take that break.
Patrick.
And then we'll come back and wrap up after this break.
Let me tell you.
All right. This is the Matt McNeil Show. We have just a couple minutes left before we have to wrap up here. So, Philip, I'm going to give you the last word. Tell us, I guess briefly, about the block that we have on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, your show and my show are the bread. If you know, you have a sandwich, right? There's 4 shows. Your show and my show are the bread, and then of course we have this queer book and Gailey show as one piece of bread. Then we have Twin Cities Pride Amplified and Ellie's show in the middle, and then me. So. And there's no voice for LGBT people really in the Twin Cities when it comes to our issues, things that people want to hear about. And
Absolutely.
You and I and the other 2 shows are doing it.
We're doing it. The most comprehensive coverage of the LGBTQ community in Minnesota and beyond every Saturday afternoon. Most comprehensive coverage on podcast and in radio. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. And yes, please go and vote. You've heard it from a candidate. You've heard it from a senior organizer. Now you've heard it from a person who's been doing it. It has been such a pleasure to fill in for Matt today. He will be back tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.